The question to you is, what lessons did we learn as an international community in Bosnia that are applicable to Syria, both from what we did do and what we did not do? And it's open to whatever you wish to respond.
I'll start.
There was a report that was done 5 years after the massacre of Srebrenica, and it was a UN report. It was sort of the first of its kind, and the UN examined its non-action deeply, especially because Srebrenica became such a disaster. And in the report, it ends with the following statement: "The worst mistake we made was to say we intended to do something that we had no intention of doing." So you can't say you're going to go into a country and that you intend to keep peace when you have no intention really of doing so. So it seems to me that what perhaps we've learned is that you have to have political will. And by that, it's not just this sort of vapid organization called the United Nations. United Nations, just like US government, just like anything else, is made up of people. And so if people pressure their congressmen and senators and government sort of more generally, it's much more likely that government might very well involve itself in an issue that's very important. But if there's no political will, whether at those levels of government or among you and me, it's not going to happen. And it seems to me the second issue with Srebrenica is that peacekeepers on the ground, just like in various problem zones in Africa, are rarely given the muscle to do what they need to do on the ground. So whether that's to keep peace, but that's all they're allowed to do. They are not allowed to defend, really. They're not allowed to use weapons at all. There's no way for them to sort of provide safe haven when in fact they don't have the tools to do that, is in fact saying you intend to do something that you cannot do. And I think the fact that at Srebrenica so many people flocked to what was called a safe keeping and safe haven, thinking they would somehow be protected, was in fact probably part of the disaster.
It might be, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but it's something for us all to think about as a group. It could be that it would be useful to break it down into its parts. So once the violence begins is different from before the violence begins. And one of the things that happens is the vilification of the other. So that's really one of the things that lets it snowball. I don't care about those people or I don't listen, or apathy. So maybe part of the lesson to prevent all of this lies in the educational systems and in individual responsibility and how you look at the other and so on. And then it will be different from once the conflict starts. I don't know, just something to think about. Compassion, in other words.
Are there any questions on the floor? Yes.
I'm curious why American foreign policy doesn't see it as beneficial to intervene in Syria, because with the escalating violence, I feel like it's destabilizing and potentially like different regions. Like now there's shots being fired into Israel, shots being fired into Turkey, refugee situation, thousands and thousands of people flowing into different countries. Isn't it in American foreign policy interest to intervene, you know, no-fly zone, humanitarian effort?
Well, I guess there's a lot of things that we might do, but the difficulty is that, you know, it's kind of like the way I defined it. I mean, you have to ask, I mean, I think the problem is, from your perspective, and the reason you asked the question is, you know, and this is kind of, you know, maybe callous, I don't know if that's the word, but I think right now, I think the answer is no one sees it as really being in our interest.